Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Love with Megan podcast, talking all things holistic health and mind, body, soul, healing and expansion with me, your host, Megan Cooper. Up on the podcast this week, we have my beautiful friend, Tatjana Lucia. Together, we are co-creating and co-facilitating the Path to Wholeness Retreat, running the 7th to the 11th of September at Meadowsweet, nestled in the Tuscan mountains in Italy. Today, we thought we would sit down and tell you a little bit about the conception of the Path to Wholeness, what that means to us, and an invitation into that journey for yourself. Whether you are joining us or not, I hope that this is an interesting, inspiring conversation for you. Reconnecting to ourselves and to the world around us in a new and deeper way so that we can live with more love, joy, freedom and ease, connected deeply to the essence of who we truly are. Oh, well, I'm very excited for us to be recording this today, nearly as excited as I am for our retreat in September.
I know, me too. I can't wait. I think it's going to just be so wonderful. The more we speak about it, the more excited I'm getting at the prospect of us being in the Tuscan mountains in just over 3 months from now, I think, or even sooner, actually.
Just under 3 months. So yeah, very soon indeed. Okay, love. So let's dive straight in to this retreat. So we called our retreat a path to wholeness. So what does a path to wholeness mean to you?
Oh, I love that. So wholeness has been an interesting journey, I think, that I've been on for the past 7 years and stepping into this space of, I guess, unraveling the soul and looking at myself through a different lens and trying to understand who I am and how I got here. And I think the path to wholeness really has been an unbecoming of all the things I thought I was and all the things that I had been conditioned to be. I think also an unbecoming of my experiences. I think in our retreat, we'll be looking a lot at the impact that our life experiences have had on us, the good ones and the bad ones, or the ones that have been challenging, let's rather say. And I found that the path to wholeness has really been a process of understanding those experiences and the impact that they've had on me and how they have molded me into the person that I am in this moment in time. But at the same time, realizing that I don't need to be the victim of those experiences and I don't need to live my life being controlled by my trauma. And that actually becoming whole is actually, in a way, unbecoming all of those things and letting go of those narratives and those limiting beliefs and really stepping into who we are at the core of ourselves, who we are beyond all the layers of conditioning that we have gathered through our lifetime. And I think in a nutshell, and I think this is something we could speak about for like a 4-hour podcast in itself, but that is what the path to wholeness represents to me. And I'd be very curious what your perception of it is. I know we've spoken about it a lot, but for the lovely listeners, I think your opinion is always just so magical.
Yeah, so we really came up with that theme on the basis of looking at the origins of health, or the etymology of the word health, healing, which is essentially to make whole. So for me, I think when I started along this path of self-development, self-discovery, it was really about learning new things. Whereas I really resonate with what you're saying, that at some point it shifts gears into this place of unbecoming and unlearning and deconditioning and letting go of all the layers that we aren't in order to reconnect to our essence. So in the frame of to become whole, it's gathering up all these parts of ourselves that we have shunned, made wrong, repressed, judged, forgotten, left out. And I can really see that, resonating along my own journey of really calling back in all these parts of myself. And that's what comes to this place of wholeness, where we're coming into deep self-love, deep self-acceptance, deep self-compassion. And from then we can just continue to become and unbecome and connect to this place of wholeness and almost true, authentic alignment and essence. One thing that we've discussed on the back of this path to wholeness is it really is a path. It's not like you come on a retreat and you're healed in 4 days and then you kind of go back to like, the real world, let's say, or your real life. And then just left kind of thinking, well, what do I do now? The path to wholeness is really gathering up, a whole approach, like a whole way of being, a whole way of guiding yourself along that path. And, I can really see that teachers in my past have kind of just ushered me onto my own path of healing, kind of done a bit of like a diversion of like, no, come back this way, like gentle kind of calibrating onto this path. And I feel like that's really what we are wanting to create on this retreat, is giving people those sustainable outlooks and perspectives and approaches so that they can continue to do the work in real time on the real days, obviously with, further guidance and teachings and support and stuff, but really just creating that path, that trajectory for yourself, where you yourself are your best guide and teacher. That's what comes up for me.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I know it's something we've spoken about a lot, having gone to so many retreats and trainings, and really having both dedicated the past decade of our lives to this world of growth and development and the exploration of self. And I think we both so strongly agreed on this emphasis on sustainability and like, what is a sustainable approach to healing, and how do we not just create an immersive transformational experience in the 4 days that the beautiful women who are coming on the Path to Wholeness Retreat are going to be embarking with us on in Tuscany, but rather looking at how can this translate into their day-to-day lives? How can we make the retreat the starting point of a lifelong journey that they will be on? And how can we equip these women with the tools to be able to navigate day-to-day life? I think it's very easy to be happy and carefree when you're running around in the Tuscan mountains eating delicious food from the permaculture garden and surrounded by amazing women. But the real kind of test or implementation of the things that you learn comes when you have to integrate back into the world and face your old life, and potentially also face big life decisions. I know retreats have often been the biggest catalyst for me to change my whole world and flip it upside down. So I think really with this retreat, we've really tried to create a space for sustainability and for looking at how will this be implemented in the long run? How can we equip the women who are coming, not just with transformation in the present moment, but also into their future? How can we support their future selves?
Yeah, beautiful. So we've managed to distill it down into 3 key themes, which I say we've managed to because between us, we've got so many interests, so many skills, so many different modalities. So for us, it's a case of like trying to simplify things, I guess. So our 3 central themes are reconnection to self, reconnection to sisterhood, and releasing what we're carrying from our ancestral patterns, from our lineage, from that intergenerational trauma. So can we first speak a little bit to this reconnection to self, which will be a whole day, the whole first day of the retreat dedicated to this reconnection of self? What does that mean for you, and what does that look like?
Yeah, it's definitely been probably the foundational key pillar of my journey. I've actually based the whole way that I work around self-health. So I created this self-health framework and really looking at all the different components of the self and how we can bring optimal well-being into those aspects of self. So really looking at what it means to connect to self, and how I really found working as a relationship coach and working in the field of sexology, and that being kind of the starting point of my career as a space holder, really understanding on a physical embodied level that the relationship that we have with ourselves is the backbone of every relationship that we ever have. And now working as a hypnotherapist, I'm really faced with this every day, no matter who the client is, no matter what the issue is that they're working through, whether it's addiction or career blocks or self-worth issues or negative behavioral patterns in relationships. Like I really work with the whole spectrum of mental health and well-being. And at the end of the day, it always comes back to the relationship we have with ourselves, the beliefs that we hold about who we are, what we're worthy of, what we're capable of in the world. And a lot of those beliefs stem from our early childhood, and they are ingrained in us normally between the ages of 0 to 7. That's when the child's brain is developing at its kind of fastest trajectory, and we're taking on information like a sponge. And a lot of the beliefs we have about ourselves now as adults are distilled in us at that age. And I think that's why we decided to really join forces with me bringing a lot of hypnosis and hypnotherapy into the retreat space, and you bringing the EFT piece and the matrix reprogramming piece, because we don't just want you to see where your patterns are coming from and have an understanding of it. There's so much of that now. I work with so many clients that are able to see the pattern. They are so there. They can see what's happening. They can see the timeline of the pattern. They can see where it stems from. But we really said, we don't want to just find the pattern and create that awareness. We want you to be able to leave this retreat having reprogrammed and rewired that pattern, so that you can choose to now step into a new narrative, to see the world through a different lens that isn't tainted by your trauma or by your experiences. So I think that's where this connection to self will really come in, where we will create spaces and have created journeys that will be taking the women on in the retreat space, that will allow them to unravel what is blocking them from their most authentic self. What are the layers that are keeping them from getting to that beautiful, sweet, soft core of who they are? And how can we start to shed those layers through bringing in the really kind of evidence-backed tools of EFT and hypnotherapy, which have been used across so many different contexts in kind of the scientific literature, and have shown significant improvements and so much power in creating transformation in the lives of the people that apply them and implement them in their day-to-day.
Yeah, beautifully explained and articulated. I think, it's really the subconscious that brought us back together in a way of getting to a place to create this retreat from, because our lives have beautifully interwoven over the years. We met on a retreat in Tuscany, so it feels great that we're doing a full circle, and then both living in Bali at similar times, and our lives crisscrossing, and having different backgrounds that were interlinked, but mine coming from a hormones periods and rebalancing my body, you coming through the more tantra side, trauma side, sexology, and both studying with IIN, integrative nutrition, so coming from a very body, mind, soul basis. But I remember when you went down the hypnosis path and I was going down EFT, and we kind of started talking a little bit more, and it's like, shit, like this is the deep stuff, and think until you really get to the root of your subconscious, like you said, it's like you can see the patterns, you can see all of the things that are holding you back. But in the subconscious, there's so much stuff, a lot of really supportive stuff that keeps us alive every day, but also a lot of things which are holding us back from a really, really long time ago. Following that too, working somatically with the body, with the nervous system, to recalibrate to a new way of being and feeling in the world. Yeah, I'm really excited about bringing forth that element. I mean, I know that for me, working with my subconscious has just been the most expansive, illuminating experience over the years. I mean, would you say that for you?
Hugely. I mean, I can speak from my own kind of journey with trauma very briefly in a nutshell. I worked with talk therapy for years and years and years. I went through a very kind of traumatic childhood, having been exposed to sexual abuse and all of these kinds of things. And from that space, hypnotherapy was the only thing that was ever able to really allow me to move through that trauma. And this comes from someone who grew up in a very supportive home, and I had amazing parents who had nothing to do with the trauma that I went through, and they loved me unconditionally. And I had all the kind of external influences that would have made me thrive and really flourish as a person, but I was just being held back by this trauma that my body and my mind were holding, and the severe limiting beliefs that I had as a result of that. And it was showing up everywhere. It was showing up in my kind of career trajectory. It was showing up in the relationships I had with my partners. And after 6 or 7 years of trying like talk therapy and embodiment practices and all these things, it was actually hypnotherapy that was the final piece in this puzzle that just allowed me to, within a few sessions, completely change the way I feel myself, my body, my relationships, the world. And I just came out of that process completely transformed. And that's when I decided to train in this modality, because I just saw the future of healing really lying in the space of the subconscious mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, through doing that work and that deep excavation, that deep reconnection, it really does allow us to step beyond our limiting beliefs and to make whole, closing the loops to the past that are still going on and bringing mind, body, and spirit together. So moving on onto this reconnection into sisterhood, following this reconnection to self, we discussed that actually over the years as well, reforming our relationship to other women was a really expansive experience for us. So can we speak a little bit to why we've included sisterhood work within this retreat?
I've been facilitating women's retreats now for 4 years. And it's funny because I think we spoke about this the other day on one of our intention setting calls with one of the women who are joining the retreat. And we were just speaking about both of us having facilitated these spaces in the past. I'm just seeing the immense power that unfolds when women come together. And I think we really are, and I get full body goosebumps while I'm saying this, but we really are tapping into like the core of the collective, where our whole history before kind of the patriarchal systems were put into place was around community and gathering together. Our like ancestors way back would be in tribes and villages, and the women would just sit, and a lot of the healing would happen through community and through listening and sharing stories and learning from each other's experiences and just being held and being seen, and without having any expectations, without even expecting people to fix the problem, but just being together. And I think with the kind of way that society has shifted that narrative, and the way that we see those relationships has been so skewed, where we now have been conditioned to be in competition with each other. We've been conditioned to almost fear other women because of the way that we have been brought up by society. And I think so much of the healing and the magic that is held in that connection has been lost. And for me, one of the most beautiful things about creating retreat spaces is seeing that connection rebuild, and actually creating a space for women to realize that they can be safe with other women, and that there is so much healing that happens when they just come together. As you and I said, we could create this retreat and just sit back, relax, and sip on beautiful infusions all day long and just let the women do their thing. And they would probably walk away from that retreat saying it was one of the most transformational experiences of their life. Not because you and I were there, but just because they got to drop into the sacred, magical healing space of being with other women and rebuilding those connections. And I know for me personally, that's been a huge part of my journey. The women who have come into my life, you included, and who have been there through some of the hardest kind of moments as well. And knowing that I have this tribe of women who are just such heart-centered beings has been so immensely healing for me. Yeah, what's been your experience, I guess, with women's spaces and reconnecting to the sisterhood? I would love to hear more about what you want to share on that.
I think there's so many layers to this, and it's such an ever-evolving journey. You know, I remember the retreat that we actually met on years ago, which was a women's only retreat. And I've been on, you know, lots of women's retreats and facilitated on lots of women's retreats. And I feel like that retreat for me was an immensely healing experience of really looking at the way we did a lot of work around, you know, self-love, self-acceptance, the way that we speak to ourselves, and actually understanding that I wasn't the only one carrying wounds. And, you know, looking at other women being like, wow, how would she ever have any issues? You know, she looks perfect, or my perception of her. And then looking and then listening to things that came up for her around her own insecurities, and actually kind of getting to a place to be like, wow, we're all working through really similar stuff, you know, different iterations, different manifestations, but understanding that we have really shared experiences and that everybody's human. You know, you look at a lot of other people or facilitators or people you see on Instagram or whatever and think, you know, God, how would they ever have insecurities? Or, you know, maybe like, you know, big celebrities, but actually realizing we're all just human. We're all working through our stuff. And I think that there's such nourishment available within that. And, you know, I went to a ceremony, a plant ceremony retreat last summer. And I noticed that I was really triggered by so many of the women there, because, you know, everyone's like dressed like beautifully and like all have like incredible singing voices and musicians. And it made me feel this sense of lack within myself, you know, despite the fact that I really love and like myself. But it really, you know, dug into something deep. And I really took that as an intention into the space of the next few days. I was like, oh, good, the next layer. And it really allowed me to see so much of the wounding collectively of the feminine that we have all experienced, and reach a place of celebrating one another. And I know that this is a big intention for us to carry into the retreat, of instead of a woman illuminating something to you that you wish that you had, it's shifting that perspective and being, wow, she's illuminating it to make it possible for me, and getting to a place of celebrating rather than comparing. And when we can let that go, you know, the thing that comes up for me is just how much lighter it feels. You know, you don't have to go outside and be kind of always unconsciously on the lookout for the next person, the next thing that's going to tell you that you are not enough. It's shifting into that place of abundance, of, wow, she's showing me what success could look like. She's showing me what joy is available for me. And just knowing that there's enough for, you know, for all of us to go around, that we can create all of that. And then really just wanting all other women around us to win as well, you know, getting into that place and being in such a supportive container for a few days. If that's not your current landscape within your life, just being in that energy of support and celebration is so expansive. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you just absolutely covered all the bases, and I couldn't have said it better myself, just what we're intending to create. And I think this theme of celebration versus comparison is really big. And there is so much medicine to be found in that space.
Just as an additional thing that comes up for me as well, it's letting our feminine energetics come online within ourselves, but also our relationship to our masculine, because society is in such a doing hustle mode, you know, which is kind of the energetics more associated with the masculine. So whilst we also want to develop that enhanced relationship with our feminine, you know, our ability to just be, to let go, to flow from a very powerful place, also calling in our, you know, really strong relationship to our masculine, again, just coming back to that place of wholeness, that place of balance within ourselves. And, you know, I know for you, you've said that healing your relationship with your masculine has also allowed you to really heal your relationship with, taking it then into gender, you know, call in amazing male relationships. And, you know, for me, calling in, you know, my perfect partner, you know, healing our relationship to our feminine and our masculine is so important as well.
Yeah, that piece of inner union, I think, and realizing that our external world is always going to be a reflection of what's happening within ourselves. And when we're deeply disconnected from one of those parts of ourselves, that will also show up. And I really can speak to it. The shift that happened in my life when I started healing the wounds I carried from both my own trauma, but also like ancestral trauma that was passed down the female lineage of my family. When I started healing these beliefs of I can't trust men and men are going to hurt me, and essentially just feeling really unsafe around the masculine. And there's still pieces of that sometimes. I notice it coming up, but there's more awareness around it, and there's more kind of self-ability to move through that and understand where it's coming from, and using the tools that we'll be diving into in the retreat to also work through that on a day-to-day basis. But my gosh, the relationships I have with men have just completely transformed, where I now can safely say that I have the most incredible men in my life that love and adore me as friends, as brothers. Even the relationship with my dad and my brother have completely shifted in the way that I see them, the way that I engage with them, the way that I communicate with them. And there's just so much love there. There's so much compassion. There's so much empathy. There's so much honesty and vulnerability. And I can see how me healing that has essentially created this beautiful biodynamic relationship that we're in, of we're healing together now. Like the more I heal, the more I inspire them to heal, the more they inspire me to heal and become my best self. And we're just feeding each other at this point to evolve into the highest version or potential of myself. And I cannot even put into words how amazing that journey has been, and how it really is just a byproduct of coming back to who you are, and working through those layers that we spoke about and connecting to self.
Beautiful. So the third day that we have of our retreat is around this intergenerational healing. And you mentioned a little bit there in your explanation around healing past trauma, because we have the past trauma of our own lives that we're carrying, that we're still holding that disconnection from. But also we have, which is really essential for our healing, a lot of stories that we've carried down intergenerationally, as well as the trauma that we're literally carrying within ourselves, from past generations. So this is why the subconscious work is so important, why the somatic work and embodiment practices and releasing around the nervous system and on a cellular level, all of it's so important. So can we speak a little bit to this ancestral aspect?
Yeah, it's something that's really prominent in the work that I do with hypnotherapy. I have a lot of people who come to me wanting to work through like pain that they've kind of held in their whole life. And a lot of the time it ends up being something that is actually generational and has been passed down through their lineage. And I mean, they've done a lot of studies on Holocaust survivors and how people in our generation are still carrying the cellular trauma of their grandparents, who were, for example, people who survived the concentration camps and went through that kind of really significant trauma. So that's kind of hard facts as to the truth that we carry trauma in our cells and our bodies from generations back. And this extends much further back than just 1 or 2 generations. It can go back. I've really worked into like long timelines in hypnotherapy. So what we'll be doing is really looking at this part of healing that is often quite overlooked. There's a lot of emphasis on the present moment and not really understanding how much generational trauma can impact us, and how someone can do a lot of deep work on themselves in this moment, but if they are carrying pain and suffering that is deeply embedded from a different kind of aspect of self and is kind of passed down through a generation or a lineage, there's so much work that needs to be done there. And I see it, how quickly people can shift their lives when they let go of this burden that they've been holding. And a lot of the time, people who are holding this burden can feel quite hopeless, and they can feel a lot of despair because they kind of fall into guilt, and they're like, I don't understand why I feel this way. I don't know why I have this depression or this fear or this addiction or this tendency towards violence, because I have done all of this work on myself, or I've had a really good life, but I still feel this way and I don't understand. So the generational piece can also bring a lot of self-compassion, a lot of empathy, and a deeper sense of understanding. And I've also seen how when we do this work, we can also heal a lot of the relationships we have within our family. I often see that estranged relationships within families suddenly, through working through generational trauma, can suddenly be rebuilt on a new foundation and platform. So it's really, really powerful work, and I'm really excited to be taking the women in the retreat into that space and really allowing them to see. And in some cases, maybe there is no generational trauma either, that's also very possible. But for those who have experienced anything like that, really allowing them to step into a space of liberation and no longer having to carry that burden. And I know you've also worked with this a lot, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps when you were talking about how doing this work can really change the whole web of the family. And, I've really seen that. And I will say as well that and this is on a personal note, doing that ancestral work and working with where we've come from, our history, past generations, it can make us feel more connected to past generations and supported in a different kind of way. Being able to embody so many of the positive experiences, the positive attributes, the strength, resilience, and power from past generations. So for me, it's a real anchoring. And I love this word liberation, because again, for me, it's like, that's what it comes back to. Just this freeing, this letting go, this lightness that we're able to step into, because we're carrying things that we don't even know that we're carrying, you know? And a lot of people have fear about doing this deep work, you know, doing subconscious work or doing ancestral work, because it's like, oh, I don't know what that will bring up for me. Maybe I won't be able to cope. You know, maybe it's better. I just don't know about this stuff. But actually, that stuff's controlling your life, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
So, you know, to actually bring it forth in a safe space and be held in that, and then be able to let it go, that's the stuff that creates huge change in your life. You know, if you don't do the deep healing, it's still controlling you.
There. It is still there. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. They think that we're waking up, like we're opening Pandora's box, you know, and they're suddenly going to be faced by all of these like realizations, and maybe ignorance is bliss. And I'm like, the box is already open. Like, do you not see all the demons swirling around? That is why you're currently in the situation that you're in, because these things have not been addressed. Rather, actually kind of confront them head on. And yes, it's not always easy. I always say to people when we go into a hypno session, there's no promises that this is going to be a walk in the park. But I say to them, it's 3 hours, or in this case with our retreat, it's 4 days that are going to be beautiful and sometimes painful and sometimes really triggering, and other times just so full of joy. But then you've done the work, and then you've worked through so many layers and so much stuff that you are no longer going to be sitting in a room with your eyes closed and Pandora's box is just flailing around you. You're going to be there, you're going to be very aware of it, and you're actually going to be able to slowly but surely actually put some of those things back in the box, but in a neat and ordered way, and know those things are there. We cannot erase trauma, unfortunately, that's impossible. But I always say to people, you know, when we do the work, we're able to understand how it's impacting our lives. We're able to rewire the mind, and we're able to take our power back from our experiences and choose how we show up, as opposed to being unconsciously controlled by the things that have happened to us. And when we choose, when we have that autonomy and that choice and that ability to really decide, this is how I can show up, these are all the different kind of roads I could take in the situation, I choose the road of authenticity, of empowerment, of really being within myself and going the path of truth. That's when we create change. It doesn't magically happen. It's not like you go to a retreat and suddenly life is just this easy journey. No, you will still be faced with hard decisions. You will still be faced with choices and tests. But what we're going to be doing in this retreat is allowing you to come back to that soft, authentic, beautiful core of who you are, and really anchor that in, so that you can go forward into the world and face the tests, the decisions, the choices, the navigation of life with this knowing of what is really your truth, of what is really like your inner compass and your North Star, and how to follow that, so that you're able to take on anything, no matter how hard it is, with this knowing that you have yourself and you have the wisdom and the answers within you. They are not going to be found anywhere but within yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I could go off in 1,000 directions from that. But with with trauma, I love what you brought attention to there, of stepping into a place of ownership and stepping into a place of empowerment. Because when we do resolve the trauma from a somatic level, a subconscious level, a nervous system level, we get to decide what we carry forwards. So we get to decide the trajectory of where we go now, as opposed to just leaving these big open loops that are in the unconscious that are still in the body. So when we bring that forth, we get to decide what we want to create from now on. So really stepping into that place of empowerment for ourselves. So how would you say retreats that you have been on, retreats that you have guided, how have retreat spaces enriched your life?
Oh, I feel like this could be like a 2-year podcast. In a nutshell, they have allowed me to heal in all of the dimensions of my being. They've really opened up a space for community, for connection, I think healing in groups, there's also so much that moves within the group dynamic. There's so much triggering that happens from the other participants. Sometimes there's so much connection that can unfold that can sometimes almost fast track our healing, because we are actively implementing everything that we're learning as we're learning it, which is really amazing. And I think the beauty of retreats is also the ability to disconnect from your reality for a couple of days and really put all of your energy into the present moment and into yourself, which is something we do so rarely, because there is always something more important in our modern life than being with ourselves, whether it's an email, a date, a lunch, a child, a partner, a job. There's always something. So what I love about the retreats, and especially Meadowsweet, I mean, I've run 2 retreats there in the past year, and it's just the most sacred place of connection. And it really has been created with that intention at heart. And I think for me, it's that ability to kind of step into a bubble and just really commit to being with myself and focusing on myself and coming to that place of deep healing through that. What have your experiences been? What have been some of the gifts of retreats for you?
Yeah, I think for me, connection and community is really forefront. And when I first started this work, Instagram didn't exist, social media barely existed. So it was actually kind of harder to meet people on my wavelength, or like on the path of the path that I wanted to move into. So I felt quite alone, I guess, at the beginning of my journey into deeper self-discovery. And I know that that comes up a lot for me with clients, that as they start to unravel themselves and they start to shift the types of things that they enjoy, the places they like going, the adventures they want to go on, the people that they hang out with, there's a little bit of a transition period, and that can feel quite uncomfortable, especially when you don't have like a new community, let's say, of people who are into the same things as you. That can feel quite isolating. And I know that going on retreats, and I took myself on a yoga retreat fairly early on, when I first started practicing yoga, and it was just so expansive for me to be immersed in it for a big amount of time and meet people who are interested on that journey. And then, every time I come back to retreat spaces, I've made so many friends on retreats, and, I've met so many amazing people, and just getting to be in that space. And like you said, it's like a little bubble of space, and just getting to meet these different connections, enhance community. And, now my life is very much based around community, surrounding myself with expansive, inspiring people who are really on my wavelength, who I can go for a walk with and have an amazing conversation, which basically kind of gives me another 3 weeks worth of inspiration.
Yeah.
But having these people really injected into my life throughout the last decade has just been so powerful. Community is so important for our growth. We're hardwired for connection as humans, aren't we? So if connection and community is not something that you currently have, but you really want to move into, being in these types of spaces is really, really transformational.
100% agree with you on that.
Yeah, I know. Just to add to that as well, something else that comes up for me is, and I think and talk about this a lot, but within our society, within our Western society, ceremony is something that's really missing, ceremony and ritual, and being in circle, even going to a women's circle for me, it's just like, oh, I feel like I just dropped down a few gears. But being in ceremony with other people, sharing, experiencing, it's such a game changer.
It really is. There's something so like deliciously yummy about just stepping into circle with other souls. Like I don't even want to think about it as like bodies and genders, but actually just like other soul beings who are here on this planet and have incarnated in this physical human experience and are just trying to navigate the absolute ocean of volatility and beauty and magic and calmness and chaos that is life. And there is something so healing when we can just come together and be like, this is really hard sometimes. And I really, some days I'm like, why did I do this to myself? And then in the same breath of air, I'm like, oh, but it's so beautiful to feel and love and experience and like all of the things. So I just love that we get to be on that journey together and create the space here for people to really just step into that and feel it all. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, the messy. I think the space that we create together is really one where it's like everything is welcome here. All of you is welcome here. And we celebrate all the parts of you, the parts that are hidden in the shadows, the parts that are in the unconscious, the parts of you that you love, the parts of you that you're ashamed of showing to the world. Like we want all of that, because that's where the integration of self happens, when we can really just embrace everything, all the facets of our being, and acknowledge that that's really what this human experience is.
Yeah. And what was really coming through for me when you were talking there was just this piece around vulnerability, because I feel like when we step into these spaces, it's literally like we slowly we're there to drop the guards, right? You know, I kind of arrived to these spaces and I'm like, right, hit me. What do you got? And it's like dropping the layers. And it's funny how, you know, friends who I've met in these types of experiences, I know their deepest wounding and their deepest childhood trauma before I know their surnames and what they do for work.
Yeah.
You know, even like I think I saw like a year ago or 6 months ago or something, like your surname on an invoice. I was like, shit, I didn't even know your surname. You know? It's crazy. I think like it sets a tone for the relationships and friendships that I want to cultivate in my life. It just gives that permission slip when you go home to be like, no, I do want to take this depth into my life. I do want to like get to the core, the essence of who somebody is. And yeah, I feel like it opens a lot of new doors for me in relationships and friendships and community.
Yeah, I feel like retreats really give you almost like a training ground, a really safe space to explore who you actually want to be in the way that you connect to people, and give you that confidence to realize that if you can do this here, you can do it anywhere. And I'm I will not be shy to sit down with like a new friend or even on a date and be like, so what is your greatest fear in life? What is the biggest trauma? Let's talk about that. And it's crazy because yes, there's going to be people that do not respond well and that are like, that is a lot. But the beauty is that I can feel for myself that those are not probably the people that I want to be connecting to. The people that I want to be connecting to are the ones who are like, oh my God, I'm so happy you asked. Like, let's bypass the bullshit. And I think when you step into that place of authenticity and you realize that this is the kind of relationships that I want, when some people really, they love the small talk, that's where they thrive. And I celebrate those people too. I have a lot of friends that I have those relationships with where it's witty and quick and just like a fun time. Because I think when you do this work and you spend so much time in the depths of like the trauma work, you also want to have those moments of just like letting your hair down, having fun and speaking about like the weather. But you can really start to feel, and I would say all of my friends that I have that lightness with also have this immense capacity to go so deep. And you, as soon as you step into that energy, you just start pulling those people in, and it's just really powerful and magical.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you just said of, we can do the really deep work. We can do the shadow work. And sometimes it's gritty and messy, but also we can do it whilst having a lot of fun. And we can dance and we can be joyful. And it doesn't, with all the darkness, it's also the light. And I really want to, that's something that I really carry into my work. I mean, I'm a very, I guess, jokey, light type of person. I wouldn't all just be like, you know, heavy. So I really resonate with you on that one. I think that's a really important point to make in terms of retreats. It's like having fun as well. You know, it's like doing the deep work, but also just like having fun, sitting with joy, expanding all of that side of yourself too. So to start wrapping up, what to expect at Meadowsweet? What to expect at Meadowsweet?
So Meadowsweet is a place that is extremely close to my heart. It was actually founded by a good friend of mine, Anya, who is just the most incredible, wise woman. Her whole family is just so dedicated to this work and has been in this space for their whole lives, essentially, or the space that the land is on was created with this intention of healing and creating a space for retreat and really deep work to happen. So it's a 2,000-acre piece of land in the middle of the Tuscany mountains, very far away from everything and anything. Energetically, it's a very potent space. There's natural springs that run through the land. There's a lot of medicinal herbs that grow on the land. We're going to hopefully have Amanda, Anya's mum, who's an intuitive herbalist, joining us on one of the mornings, and she'll be taking the women on a guided walk where they'll explore kind of medicinal herbs for hormonal health and really connecting to their cycles, which is something we're going to be doing. All of the food that we'll be eating at the retreat will either come from the permaculture gardens on the land or from the local village. We're going to have a beautiful chef coming from the UK who'll be cooking for all the beautiful ladies at the retreat. And I mean, when you look at what to expect, it's just like beautiful mornings, doing yoga and embodiment practices out on the deck, sharing circles, lunches and breakfasts under the pergola overlooking the mountains, just so much beautiful plant-based food, deep connection, amazing sunsets. The retreat is happening in September, so it'll be fig season then. So hopefully we'll be eating lots of figs, which is also just such a sensual, soft time, which I actually hosted a retreat on these exact dates last year. And it was just that warm kind of end of summer feeling when everything is just like that hue of orange and is just so really luscious and full. All of the rooms are beautiful. It's kind of farm style cottages, really, really incredible. Just a homey feel, like everything just feels like you walk in there and it feels like you've been there before. And it feels like you can just sit down on the couch and read a book, or sit on the terrace and just look out at the nature, or lie on the grass in the afternoon sun. There's a beautiful natural pool there as well. So there'll be lots of time to swim and relax. And we really focused on interweaving deep transformational workshops with also a lot of downtime and a lot of time to rest and integrate. So the afternoons are mostly just time for the women to relax, unwind, eat some snacks, lie in the sun, nap, really just integrate all of the information and all of the healing. So it will be a really full but soft, I think, is a beautiful way to describe the time at Meadowsweet.
Can we stay forever?
Yes, I think we should.
We're booking it out indefinitely. Come.
Yeah. Perfect. I'm
in. Okay, so just to finish off, how to know if this retreat is right for you?
I think the first thing I always say is if your soul has felt excited reading about this retreat or hearing about this retreat, and there's this feeling in your body of like, I need to be there, that's probably a good thing to follow. A lot of us tend to disconnect from our intuition, and our heads can get in the way of why we shouldn't go. But if you connect back to your body, what is your body saying? And how do you feel listening to this? And the second piece is, I think if you are someone who has just been doing the work and wants to grow and wants to evolve, but you just feel stuck and you feel like you're looping, and you feel like no matter how many affirmations you say or how much you journal or how many circles you go to, you're just finding yourself back in the same situation or the same pattern or the same thoughts are looping in your head, this retreat is the place for you, because we're going to be working with exactly this this theme of finally being able to unblock the things that you may be fully aware of but just unable to work through.
Yeah, beautiful. I really agree with what you said about if it is a body yes, a soul yes, those are always the guidance points to trust, right? And I make all of my decisions from that place. You know, I've signed up for courses where I haven't even had any information about the course. I've just seen it and been like, yep, I'm doing that. And up to courses and being like, what are we doing here? Like, I have no idea, but I just know I need to be here. And with retreats, I've done that too. Retreats that I've signed up for, even very early on in my journey of self-development, yoga. The first few retreats I signed up for, I was like, I have to go on that. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, but I'm going to go on it. And it never fails. So that whole gut instincts, intuition, body, soul, yes, really, really resonates with me. And something that we've discussed as well is just knowing that there is more in some way. And, that was really powerful for me, at the beginning of all of this work, of just knowing that I was really happy in some ways. I had everything that I'd been told was a great thing to have in life, the job, the partner, I was living in London, all these things. And I had all of the tick boxes, but just feeling like something wasn't right. And knowing that there was something out there, which I had no idea what it was, but just felt like it was pulling me in that direction. And for me, that was really that journey into authenticity, into alignment, reconnecting with my essence. So I feel like that is a thing that, that we've spoken about, of this, just knowing that there is more, not necessarily knowing what that is, but just knowing that there is something else, or something holding you back, or something that you're wanting to step into and create for yourself. I feel like that's a powerful place to come on this retreat as well.
Yeah. Amen to that. If you're listening to this podcast and you have questions about the retreat, reach out to one of us. We also, for everyone who applies, we do an intention setting call with you, which is just like 30 minutes of us, Megan and I, jumping on a call with you, chatting to you about the retreat, chatting to you about your intention for the retreat, and really also allowing you to explore whether this is the right space for you. We've been very selective with who is joining the retreat. We have one more spot left on the retreat, so we are going to be full within the next couple of weeks. But if you are feeling the call, jump on a call with us. There is no kind of commitment that happens with that call, and it's only after that call that you really have to decide whether you want to come or not. But we would love to have you there. And as I said, trust that feeling. And whenever I'm in those moments of like, oh, I really want to go and I don't know if I can make it happen, I always think of this quote by Paulo Coelho from The Alchemist, which is something along the lines of, when you step into like your soul's path or your soul's calling, the universe will conspire in miraculous ways to get you to where you need to be. So just trust that if you're meant to come to this retreat and you feel that call, you will get there, and probably in the most unexpected ways too.
Yeah, love that. Little tingles. Yes, yes, yes. Say yes to that. All right, lovely. Well, all the information for how to get in touch with us, the retreat information, all going to be in the show notes. Big love to all. We're looking forward to seeing you in September. And for those of you that enjoyed this conversation but can't make it in September, get in touch with us anyway so we can keep you updated about future events.
Yay, lots of love.